All righty, let's get this thing started. My name is Russ Summers, and I'm your moderator today. Today's topic is enablement in the age of AI, turning B players into A players. And speaking with us today, we are super stoked to have Katie Pariseau, head of enablement at TrustRadius and leader of the Austin chapter of WISE, Women in Sales Enablement. Katie, it is so nice to see you.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. And also joining us is Noah Zandan, CEO of Quantified.ai, a platform for AI-driven sales practice and coaching. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
And I want to just jump right into the topic. And for somebody that hasn't attended one of our webinars before, we're going to keep this super conversational. This is a conversation, not a presentation. So I also encourage people to submit questions using the Q&A function, and we will answer those questions at the end as we have time to do so. But I want to start with a provocative question because, Katie, we initially, I've worked with you before, of course, and you've worked with the Quantified platform with the TrustRadius team. But you and I started talking a couple months ago when we were publishing a piece of content called the B Player Guide about how to uplevel your B players. And I just, I have this very democratic spirit, as you know. And so I got to ask, is it even fair to segment teams into B players and A players and C players? Nobody likes to be told, hey, Bob, you're a C player. So is this even a fair way to think about the world?
So I think it is fair because it's a way to kind of judge your team in a way that's based on data and not sentiment. Because from my experience, sales reps and almost anyone in a customer facing role is always motivated by seeing some sort of dashboard or ranking of where they stand, where they're getting credit for the things that they're doing. And when they always want to be at the top. Right. And so data is a great way to be able to show that. It's also a great way when you have the data to slice and dice it so that you can prescribe what that person needs to go from a C player to a B player or a B player to an A player. If you didn't have some sort of grading system, it would be really hard and a little chaotic and everything would feel like a one-off. So you kind of have to have some sort of framework or measurement mentality so you can start to add value and help people get to the next level, regardless of where they are on that spectrum.
That's interesting. And that when I think of where you and I first worked together at TrendKite, walking across the sales floor and having the boards up with the stacks where you can literally see who's at the top and who's at the bottom. Uncomfortable to be at the bottom, but it's motivational.
Very motivational. And there's something like intrinsically motivational about wanting to be on the top there that it doesn't require a person. It's just you going, I'm here and that's where I am because either I didn't put something in Salesforce and I should be higher, or I need to do more outbound, or I need to get more pipeline built, or whatever it is that chart is showing. It's kind of helping them see where they're deficient and also reminding them that they have control in a lot of those dashboards to get from the bottom to the middle or the top.
That is a great perspective. What about you, Noah? You and I have had the same question. We even had that conversation about your guitar the other day. Is it fair to say there are A players, B players, and C players, and why?
I was thinking about this question, Russ, and I have really young kids, right? And my oldest kid is 6. My other 2 kids are twins. They're 4. And right now they're all very, very special. Right? Like they are special. They don't get grades, just the beginning of standardized tests. And it's like, in my mind and my wife's mind, as well as my kids' minds, they're all A players. And, then they go to school and they, go to college, hopefully, if that's the path for them, and they get these grades and they get these rankings, and then, you kind of spit them out into the workforce. And it's really job dependent. Right. I mean, in a past life, we built software that was learning software. And, one of our product leaders had the smart idea of building a leaderboard. So we built a leaderboard. And I'll tell you, a lot of the chief learning officers said, Noah, you can't do that. Right. Like, you can't rank my people. Please don't rank my people. And one of them, we one of them was, actually mid delivery of like a program, they said, please take it away. And it was interesting because a lot of the users actually reached out and said, hey, we miss it. Like, can you bring it back for us? Like, so it's this funny philosophy of like, we're all trying to gauge where we are and where we sit. The way I look at it, probably not too dissimilar from Katie, is in sales, everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to achieve, they want to deliver, they want to make money, and they want to know where they stand. And that's a really, really important part of their success. Sometimes it's internal success versus external success. We can talk about that a little bit later, but we're building for, one of the ways we want to build this software at Quantified is to build it, to help sales teams with the existing patterns and performance measures that they have. And as we talk to a lot of sales teams, pretty universally, they think about it like we've got A players and B players and C players. The distribution of that tends to be pretty varied. So we do see across industries and verticals, sometimes the A players are 10%, sometimes the A players are 50%, just sort of depending on the industry. But it's a well-known nomenclature. People really like the rankings that we're able to provide because it helps solidify that in a variety of ways.
I like that because people do know where they stand, and you're right. We start, as children, everyone is special, and then we start to figure out where we shine and where we don't. I'm not going to ask whether your twins competed on APGAR scores, but probably doesn't matter.
My wife is a nurse, so you can guess what the outcome of that question is, Russ.
Oh, I'm fairly sure. My wife is a nurse also, as you know. But if we're going to have those A, B, and C players, Katie, who decides? Who is the person in, because somebody has to ultimately be the grader, right? Be the professor
Right.
in the class of sales life. And who makes that decision?
Yeah, so it varies. And in most organizations, it's kind of a joint ownership based on data. Ultimately, it's usually the sales manager. I mean, at the end of the day, because their number is tied to their team's numbers. However, based on data from your BI team or your sales ops team or your enablement team, there could be other factors that you would want to include to make sure that ultimately that sales manager or sales leader has the information they need to know who are your A, B, and C players. And then like it's easy-ish to lump people into like, oh, they're a B player, they have potential, they have more potential that they haven't gotten into yet, but they are kind of lumpy in like hitting their numbers. Like they hit and then they miss and then they hit again, right? But you can have someone be a B player in one thing, like hitting their number, and you can have them be an A player in building pipeline or closing or something like that. And you can kind of slide up and down that scale based on the latest data and experiences and effort and coaching to get, like we're saying, trying to get people from B to A. People are constantly going up and down as like, your product changes. Well, now you had A players who are really good at selling that product. They might slide down to being a B player because they aren't masters of selling the new thing yet, right? Or you roll out a new technology. Everybody is not a master of using that thing. Maybe you have people who were B players who used that at their last company and they can come in as a super user. So now they're an A at that thing, but they haven't translated that to selling your product just yet.
That, just to reflect back a couple things that I think I heard and validate, one is ultimately often the sales leader's decision, but a second thing is part of your role as somebody that gets, deep into the data. And I know that's just a part of your personality. You can often play a role as honest broker in terms of making sure that the decision is data-based rather than Bob is like me, so I rank Bob highly versus Susie might be different. So I heard that. And then the other thing I heard was different courses. Somebody might be great at Salesforce or I knew one rep that was really good at the initial part of the sales process and really had to get a lot of coaching on closing. So different courses, so to speak.
Yes, 100%. And then how you help them get to that next level varies widely. Is it, I don't understand Salesforce, or is I don't feel comfortable talking about the pricing and the closing process, because that's more of a soft skills training. So it's the data plus like listening to calls and getting coaching on calls. You have to kind of put it all together. So it's not just one standalone thing. The data is an input, so you can go, you know where to go dive deeper to be able to assess how to best help that person get to the next level.
That makes great sense. Noah, how do you see that across, especially across the quantified customer base? Is it similar to what Katie described, or do you see differences?
It is. I really like the way that Katie thinks about it and Katie puts it. And I think, we're lucky to have Katie here because, she's enablement, but she's probably, a slash RevOps data person as well, which is, she brings that perspective, which is really nice. So I agree with her. I think that part of what we're unpacking a lot with our customers at Quantified is you've got to wait a few quarters to get that data because it's typically performance based, right? I mean, Katie probably gets an early read on someone's Salesforce fluency when she's onboarding them, but like what it really comes down to, A players, B players, C players, it's generally based on attainment, win rate, whatever it is, right? So what we often talk to our customers about is how can you get an early read on that? Like we're not going to go all the way to hiring, but during onboarding, are there ways that you can do checks, evaluations, assessments, training, coaching that allow you to get an early read? Look, we often hear back in 2021, I'd just hire 3 reps and I'd keep the best one, right? And we're sort of in an environment then that allowed you to operate with that level of inefficiency. That's over, right? I mean, say Katie's team, amongst many other the sales teams we talk to, are told to do more with less. And, there's the pressure to have everyone be a performer. And so a lot of what we talk about, Russ, is, the ability to categorize predictively, to get early reads on people's capabilities, and a lot of what we're trying to build with our intelligence and our data models is how do we do that really well and how do we do that valuably? So if I could tell Katie, hey, in 2 quarters, you're going to find out that Frank's not going to hit quota, and I can save her those 2 quarters of waiting, that's super valuable for her. And she might say, hey, I know how to fix Frank, right? Like he just got to learn how to use Salesforce. So I'm going to work with him on it. And we love it when we can help those people reach their potential. It's a beautiful thing when you can intervene early and help change someone's career path. Others may not get there. And in that case, maybe we're saving them from 2 quarters of frustration and a job that's not the right fit for them. And so that's really how we think about it and talk about it at Quantified.
I love that. Great way to think about it. And that predictive ability to intervene early, because by the time you've been struggling for a couple of quarters, you've made your decision about how you feel about the job. Your leaders have made the decision about how they feel about you, and it may be too late.
Yes, 100%. And just to add to what Noah said, because I think that was a fantastic take, if we get those leading indicators, that early insight, right, not only can it help me and the manager go pinpoint where that person needs help to give them the best shot, but it allows us to show them the way instead of just showing them the door once everybody's frustrated. Because if you wait and you're reactive instead of being proactive, that's what's going to happen. And it's not a good experience for anyone, the rep, the team that is having someone who is struggling and no one seems to be giving them any guidance to help them. And it's not a good experience for the business either. So it doesn't help any of the 3. Whereas if you can get those leading indicators and you can get those insights early, it gives you the best chance, or to let that rep even opt out if this isn't what makes sense in a quarter or 2 instead of 3 or 4, right? And that helps everybody involved. Plus, it's a lot easier for that rep when they go back on the market to explain why they have a gap of a quarter or 2 on their resume instead of a year. So it helps everybody.
I love that.
One of the things Katie said there, Russ, that I actually think is really wonderful is it also helps the rep, right? I mean, reps want awareness. They want to know how good they are. And sure, you've got quota, but you've also got a variety of factors that go into quota. And the more that you can help them understand where they stand and build awareness for them, the more they can ask for help, which is just a beautiful thing, right? As a manager, when you step into a one-on-one and someone says, hey, can you coach me in this area? It is so much more fun to have that conversation than it is, hey, Frank, you're underperforming in this, and he has no idea. And so, changing that dynamic is something that's really powerful.
Love that. Potential is generally unleashed through self-awareness. So I like that perspective on it a lot. You do have to look at people and sort of make these judgments in the roles. And, you can look at 2 people performing at roughly the same level. And it may be that one of them has the potential to go up and to the right, and the other one may be simply operating at their maximum potential, doing as well as they can in the current environment, current role. How do you, Katie, I'm curious to know, how do you make that judgment call of distinguishing between essentially those two people?
Yeah, so I use a 2x2 methodology where we look at potential on one axis and then current results on the other, right? So like, are they achieving or overachieving today? And then what that potential is early on, especially in onboarding, that potential is measured because it's not quite known yet, is measured by level of effort. And then that's always a factor, even when they've been there a long time. If they aren't performing, they're giving very low effort. And even though they have high potential, they're not bought in. They're probably not going to move very far from that quadrant that they're in today. Whereas when I have people who haven't performed yet because they're ramping, or it's a new role, they just got promoted, so now their number is much bigger. So where they were before is not where they need to be going forward. As long as they're putting in that effort and they've shown that potential in terms of asking for help, wanting growth, looking outside of the company for things as well, like self-fulfilling some of that as well. Those are all indicators of potential, whether it's unrealized yet, or we're saying, oh, no, they've sold into the space that we're going into next year. That's huge potential that you knew when you hired them in the first place, of being able to help the rest of the team make that transition too.
So it sounds like a key input for you is always going to be, are they doing the work?
Are they doing the work is definitely in there. And then while they're ramping, that might be just getting in the reps. Maybe they're not doing it in the real world yet, but are they practicing so that when they do get their chance, they're ready to go?
So reps need reps. They need that practice.
Reps need reps. Yes. That's a great takeaway.
Excellent.
2 quick points. I mean, one, I don't have a sales background, right? But I was an athlete. And so when I first started stepping into the sales environment, I mean, I was frankly shocked. I was like, wow, these are high pressure conversations, right? The success of this business depends on how I interact with my customers. And the amount of practice that goes into that was just shockingly low relative to the ratio of what I had seen in sports and music. I mean, I play the guitar and other areas. So just very surprised. One other quick thing I want to say is I really like the point that Katie made about effort. We did a 2,500 rep deployment across a healthcare company. And we looked at a ton of factors, right? How much were they using the message, all the different skill stuff. They had a pretty advanced competency model as well. Interestingly, the number one factor we found that predicted whether or not a rep was in the President's Club was not competency. It was not messaging. It was effort. It was practice. How much are they willing to try, and how many times are they willing to practice was the number one predictor of whether or not the reps were in the President's Club. And, it's interesting because you look at these tenured folks that perform well, and they probably got there for a variety of reasons, but generally it boils down to effort.
Yeah, I have a quick story on that, if that's okay. So in a past startup, we had our top sales rep who had the largest number on the floor and had been there for a very long time, and everyone would consider them an A+ player, that by all measures. And normally we kept our new hires kind of together so that it was easier for the manager to answer questions and all of that. But we ran out of seating at the time when we were back in the offices. And so one of the new rising stars got put right next to our top rep, and her hearing him beating the pavement, making all these cold calls, having all of these first demos, trying to build up his pipeline, that inspired her as the top A player rep, that amount of effort, those number of reps, to build even more like multi-threading and think about other opportunities on that giant account or account set that she had. It inspired her. So it's not just the leaderboards, it's also like the energy, and we miss a little bit of that going into the world we're in now. So anything where we can find where you can kind of get that and bottle it and be able to use it as we're all working remotely is brilliant.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
one
love
of the harder things. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Noah.
No, I love the point that Katie's making. And, if I sort of take it from a sales tech, sales stack perspective, I wish that, the conversation intelligence platforms brought a little bit more of that through. It's like, if it sort of shadowed me and said, hey, Noah, go listen to how Bill did this, go listen to how Bill did this. Like it's kind of replicating sitting next to someone. But the truth is, and we see this in the data, less than 1% of those calls are ever reviewed. So as much as you may have all the A+ players' calls recorded, no one's actually looking at them and no one's actually sharing them and digesting them. And I can promise you your reps, when they're, on the weekends, they're not using that as their playlist, maybe a unique few, but not many of them. So you're right, Katie. It's such a valuable sort of in-office way. If you could think about creative ways, if enablement leaders can think about creative ways to bring that, sort of comparison and peer learning forward, it can be really valuable as well.
So I'm hearing comparison, I'm hearing peer learning, and I'm hearing practice. And one of the things that I've often noticed working with sales leaders is the problem with practice is that it takes time. And a challenge that I often hear from sales leaders is, and as you know, I come out of product marketing, so I've done my share. I certainly don't have your chops, Katie, but I've done my share of trainings. And a thing that I have often heard is keep the training as short as possible, because when they're not on the phones, when they're not on the floor, they're not making money. And I'm contrasting that in my mind with, Noah's point about being an athlete or being a musician, and knowing, as a musician, we talk about woodshedding. You've got to put in the hours, right? Reps need reps once again. So I'm curious to know, Katie, you've had to navigate that with many sales leaders, some of whom I've known and some of whom are quite opinionated. And you've had to diplomatically find ways to say, we need to give these teams more training and practice. How do you navigate that with a sales leader? It can't be an easy conversation.
It sometimes isn't, but winning them over often includes data again, because I go with feeling first, and data is not my native language, but I have adopted it heavily because I understand so many more people in the business. That's their language, right? Sales leaders are no different. CROs are no different. They're always in the most important quarter of their lives, and I also understand that and empathetic to that, right? So I usually frame my enablement efforts around very specific outcomes. Like once they leave this room, they should be able to do this, and that will help them build more pipeline. That will help them have better conversations. That will help them. And it has to tie directly, just like the sales reps, right? Directly to their pain, and be able to get that time. I also like to weave in gamification and anything that I can do around competition, friendly competition, to get people excited, to get them doing it. So it doesn't feel like I'm nagging them or a platform is nagging them. It feels like, oh, I want to do this because I want my team to win. Or, oh, I want to do this because it's going to help achieve this short-term goal that we've set as a team, right? And then from there, that allows you to get that practice in, and ideally that practice is recorded in some way, shape, or form, and then you can leverage those best-in-class A-player experiences throughout the rest of your training, because it's not just a rubric saying this is what good looks like. It's an actual rubric plus 4 examples of reps who are a year in, 3 years in, 5 years in, whatever, all doing their take on those key points to get it across. So then I can leverage that in new hire onboarding going forward. I can get anyone who's getting promoted into that role to be able to see what good looks like and get them to go through that same experience.
It sounds like a piece of that is having those actual examples from practice and training where people are truly engaged in doing the work or simulating the work rather than talking about work. Sounds like a big piece of that is it makes it very concrete, because a lot of people are not abstract learners.
Yes, it makes it very concrete, and it makes it something that is easier to not only see, because even if it's written out and it's a script, it doesn't feel human. right? Getting to say it, hear the inflection. Where are they emphasizing? Did they bring in a story? Did they bring in a stat that wasn't in there to like really bring it to life for their audience? Because that's usually what elevates someone to be the winning pitch or the best pitch on the team or whatever it is. And again, getting into that competitive spirit, they know this is going to be shared. They know the other managers are going to look at it. I'm not going to put in a C effort, even though they know I'm an A player, because they're going to push that right back across the table and go, hey, Frank, we know you can do better than this. Like, can we see it? Because I really thought you were going to be the one that I'm showing to the whole company on Friday. Can we, like, do you want coaching? Do you want, is it? And they're like, oh, no, I just did it to check the box. And it's like, okay, well, I want you to inspire the rest of the team, right? And it helps everyone on every level get on the same page and still be very outcome focused.
Once more, but this time with feeling, right?
Yes, exactly. It's amazing how much of communication is not what you say, but how you say it. And so video is the best way to get that across to the team.
Interesting. You both have stories about this, and I'm curious to know, Katie, do you have a story about a B player becoming an A player? I mean, you have to have seen people take their performance up, people digress. What's your favorite story about somebody that has transformed their performance, even from C player to A player? Because I know we've both seen that.
Yes. So one of my favorite stories of a solid B player turning into an A player is from someone who was new to sales and had been onboarded and had lots of potential at one company. And then that company did layoffs. I know that's a foreign concept for most of us because tech never changes. But this happened to them, which hits the ego, hits the heart, right? They got a new job. They're ramping up. They're kind of hitting their stride and are a solid B player now for this company. And then they changed their pricing. Well, they went from being a solid player, a B player, they dropped down to a C player because they weren't confident in delivering this new pricing. That was a lot more than the previous package. So what they did was understood that was their Achilles heel because they would get coaching on their calls and everything. Like it would sound great until they flipped the switch after they got to the value part to the closing part, and their voice changed, their confidence level changed. You could tell that they didn't feel good about what they were saying, and that would completely kill the deal, as you can imagine. So what they did was we identified that was their issue. We walked through why the pricing was the pricing, like it's tech. Look at the 12 plus amazing things that are now added, which is why this pricing is elevated. Look at where the market has gone. So like convincing this is why the pricing is right. And then it's like, okay, I feel good about it, but how do I deliver it in an authentic way? And so what we did was, from listening to peers and seeing those leaderboards, who's delivering this consistently in a really authentic way that they could go model, right? And so we just had a few sessions with people. They listened to their calls and they're like, it seems like you transition with this. And it's like, yes, okay, let's practice that, right? So that not only did she know what to say and how to say it, but she had face-to-face time to practice it. So it definitely took time, but it took her from a B player sliding into a C player all the way up to an A player, top seller, wall of fame person within 2 quarters. So like it worked, but it took time and effort to get there for sure.
I love what you're talking about, Katie, because it's, it's like the winning behaviors are embedded somewhere in your team, right? I mean, they're there, like the right talk track about pricing, the right way to build rapport, the right product knowledge conversations. It's like, it's all there. A lot of, our job and where, I know you put a lot of effort in, and where I believe AI can really help enablement is can we bring those forward, right? Can we unearth those? And then can we help institutionalize those and scale your efforts across large teams? Because I love the story you told, and I want to help people do that, not just at the 1-to-1 side, but at the 1 to 1,000, 1 to 10,000 side. And that's really, that's where AI can scale a lot of the efforts you're doing.
Yeah, AI can't scale the caring, but it can absolutely scale the delivery, right? And that is just absolutely huge, because it is often the combination of those things that makes the difference. Curious to know, Katie, And I'm surprised that you said earlier that you don't view data as your native language, because you are, I've worked with you enough to know that you are fluently bilingual, and I would have taken you for a native data speaker if you hadn't said that. But thinking about it for a minute, there are a lot of factors that can affect, A player, B player, C player performance. Do you get a good territory? Our friend Hayes will often, look at that because that's kind of his business, right? Is
Yeah.
it your territory? Is it your delivery? Is it the technology? If you had 100 points to distribute in terms of what really makes the difference between an A player and a B player, how would you split those up? Where would you put most of your chips?
That's a good question. For me, the number one place that I would put my chips would be on dedicated practice. I know that feels like the theme of the whole thing, but it
There.
really is reps getting reps, which I'm totally stealing. I might make t-shirts or stickers at least. That is the number one indicator for me as an enablement person, but it also takes time and effort. So that's one of the beautiful things about working with Noah and the team and AI in general. And that's where I think that can help, which would be huge. So that would be where the majority of my chips go. I know there are external factors, like you said. The best reps that I've worked with, they understand that they could be hindered by external factors, but they focus on the things they can control. I can control if I practice or not. I can control if I do thoughtful outreach to my book of business, regardless of what my territory is. I can control if I ask for coaching and use that coaching time well. So there are a lot of other factors that are in their control, and that those are the ones where I see the A players consistently leveraging and focusing on the things that they can control, while still advocating for the things that they can't control, because they're still salespeople, right? They're not going to like ignore it, but they're not going to let it hold them back. They're going to say, hey, if I had this, look what I've done with this. If I had this too, imagine what the possibilities are.
Love it. We've talked, and I do like the reps need reps. We sort of coined it here, but we're going to use it a lot. I think both of us may. What does it mean to a rep for a rep to be putting in the reps? How do you monitor that? How do you know it's working, Katie?
So, I mean, from my perspective, it starts at the very beginning. And I liked how Noah was talking about like leading and lagging indicators before, right? So it starts with, are they doing the research on their accounts and doing the outreach, right? You could get that from whatever outreach tool that you're using. Are they attending the training to know how to position the new thing or what the new pricing is or whatever, right? So like those are all kind of leading indicators. If they didn't get it, then how are they expected to like do it well in the first place? Practice, it would definitely be in there. Call recording, like listening to your own calls, like we talked about. This is a really big low-hanging fruit place for a lot of reps to do that. And going back to the sports use case, watch their own film, right? Like you're your own worst critic. Where should you be spending your time that's going to make the most impact? And then
one thing to challenge you on that, Katie, is we hear that a lot, right? And we do hear that, and that's an intention everyone has. But I will tell you, when I look across the data of how many people watch themselves on video, it is a minuscule number, right? It is painful, whether it's the famous thing of people don't like the sound of their own voice, or it's just painful to watch. And so, another area where AI can help is if I can provide you with a data-driven scorecard and you don't have to watch it, because oftentimes people just don't like seeing themselves. And so if I can bring your performance out of watch the tape and see, versus here's how you did, and it's a score, it's it scores the right behaviors and right categories and talk tracks, then you may not be fighting so much sort of human hesitation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I have seen it when it's part of the sales culture, and the expectation is that once a month, everybody's going to send their best call and the call they want coaching on to their manager and have dedicated coaching time. But it has to be a cultural thing. Well, otherwise, it's just your C players and your A players doing it. People who know they need to change and are like actively asking for help, and people who are like, hey, and this, I love that they do this, but they'll be like, hey, I covered the new thing that you just taught us last week. I think I did a pretty good job. It landed really well. I want to send this to you in case you want to use it for like future trainings, because it's not just did they do the pitch, which they did a wonderful job, and added a story and made it like set it up with the 2 questions before that, which is brilliant, which is why they're the A player in that. But then also for future training to get to hear the customer or prospect go, oh, like get their reaction is super, super helpful. But that's a lagging indicator. When we're getting in the reps, the more we can remove that friction, to your point of, I don't want to listen to my own voice. I don't have time to watch my videos. I don't like seeing myself. I get it. So the more on the front end we can remove that, the better it will be as well.
One of the things I'm thinking, Russ and Katie, as I hear all these things, right? It's like, it's really fun to learn from Katie because she does so many of the right things, right? I know you've been in enablement and training and coaching for a long time, Katie, and you're doing so many of the right things. The extension that I hear and that I'm motivated by is it's just really hard to scale a lot of these things you're talking about, right? It's just,
Yes.
it's really hard to inspect at that level. It's really hard to assess at that level. It's hard to coach. It's hard to deliver, whether it's, doing personalized role play with thousands of people, or it's, we did a really large certification program this summer and, they needed to certify 500 people. And, it was a drug approval, right? So the drug got approved on a Friday. They wanted to certify 500 people as quickly as possible so they could all sell. And every day they're not certified, they're not legally allowed to sell. And so, it's one of those human scale problems. And, Katie, I'm sure you could sit there with each rep and certify them and coach them, but that sounds absolutely miserable to you after a few. So, so much of where we want to help, right? Where I'm motivated and inspired by someone like you who does such a good job at your job is how do we just help you scale those efforts, right? How do we use AI and technology and behavior intelligence to take the magic of what you do and bring as much of it as possible. We would never claim to be all of it, but as much of it as possible to large teams and large organizations and reps that don't get enough attention. And frankly, that's often the B players, right? I mean, some subset of the B players are there because they're just not getting the time and attention that they need. Yep. And we're all drawn to the C players because it's sort of the urgent problem to fix. And we're all, supporting our A players because they're the ones producing the number. And it's that messy middle that people get lost in where I think technology can really help.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing with thinking about AI and enablement is there's always this fear that the AI is going to take your job. I don't see it that way. I see it, especially from my experience with AI, as being the easy button for my job and giving me more time back to do the things that really help to move the needle and even get ahead and feel like I have more time to plan and I have more time to take advantage of the goodness. So I know that was one of the things when we worked with your company is we had tried to do it organically and get everyone to record themselves doing it. We gave them the script, we trained them. They all did it themselves. That was great, except for the average time for each video was like 5 minutes, and it's supposed to be an elevator pitch. And I don't want to be on a 5-minute elevator. I don't know about you guys, but that's too high or too low or something.
That's a tall building.
It's too much. And so then we adopted your platform, and it was wonderful because all of a sudden everyone's certified. They were down to the time frame we were expecting them to be. We still got really good feedback and input. We got to see exactly how many reps people did because we didn't get that when they just did it on their own. And then the other thing that I loved about it was the feedback from the field themselves of this is really easy. I logged in, I knew exactly where to go. I did my pitch. I got immediate feedback. So I didn't have to review all of them. They weren't waiting for me to review all of them or their manager. And then they could go back in and take that feedback and apply it and submit again until they were certified. And so the acceleration, all the things were still the same of like prepping for it was the same. And I had the expertise of your team while I was prepping for it. So it was even a little bit better than when I did it on my own, but the outcomes were so much faster. The rep experience was so much faster. And like I said, it was the easy button for the effort.
It sounds like it removed a bottleneck for the team, but then also let you focus on the high value activities of program design and things like that, as opposed to, it's super important to review every performance, but that's a bottleneck.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Russ and I were talking yesterday about a different, about marketing, right? And marketing automation and the original fear of when marketing automation came out. I mean, even the name is sort of like suggestive of it's going to take over my job. What am I going to do if it's just a push button? And, it's been fascinating to watch as that industry has gotten mature, and no one could ever imagine doing the marketing job without some level of software to do the things that software does really well. It can't produce a high quality campaign, right? I mean, it's just not going to do that, but it can facilitate it. And I think often, as we think about what we want to do at Quantified, there's a similar analogy there of like, we don't know your business better than you do, right? We don't know what a good rep looks like. We don't know what a good sales process is. We don't know your customer better than you do. But what we can do is try to help you scale that effort in a marketing automation like way, so you have a system of record and you can deliver it with scale, and you can do it with an easy button, right? Like I love that analogy as well. So just kind of made me think of our conversation, Russ.
Yeah, very similar, because fundamentally teams got bigger because they could do more and prove results. So that was super important. This has been an amazing conversation. I want to open it up real quick to each of you for we're going to go to questions in a minute. We've got a couple, but sort of final thoughts, as you think about this, as you think about the conversation, what are your final thoughts on it, Katie?
I think my final thoughts here are around the time of year. It's 2024. Planning is in high regard. It's a big part of my day right now. So just even being reminded of some of the stories from past lives and figuring out how can I do the best of the best playlist for my current company and my current reps. So it's a good reminder, even for myself, of things that have worked, because the goal always is to help everybody be their best version of themselves.
How about you, Noah?
Two things come to mind. I mean, first, I remember my first conversation with Katie when I was first introducing her to Quantified. And, what I think got her excited was she said her role involved 3 key initiatives. Number 1 was onboarding, number 2 was up-leveling, and number 3 was morale.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, Katie, we probably can't help you with morale directly, right? There's some things that, performance is going to have some relationship with morale, but, we're very excited to help you with onboarding and up-leveling. I know sort of the times that we're in probably means it's more up-leveling than it is onboarding. But, we're excited to deliver both of those. And then interestingly, Russ, the second question she asked me was, what kind of practice can we do with the AI, right? Is it just script memorization? Like, are you just going to take my script and see if someone recites it word for word? Or can you do things with some variety, and can you make it conversational and more dynamic and more fun? And, I think that's another thing. Like, I really appreciated you challenging us on that, Katie, because, reps don't just want to memorize. And sure, maybe that's valuable at some, very spaced out time of, say the right thing. And certainly in like regulated industries with compliance angles, there's times that we need to deliver things that are very exact and specific, but we also really want to make this fun, right? I mean, I think part of what we're trying to replace is whenever I say role play to someone, they roll their eyes. They're like, it's super valuable, but I'm going to drop some expletives on you, Noah, about how much everyone hates it. So, we want to make it more enjoyable and more fun, and we want to make it dynamic. And to do that, it has to be conversational. It can't just be a memorization tool.
Yes, I love that. And then you have helped with morale because you removed that friction, and they got the feedback right away, and it made it more actionable. So you really did all 3.
That is awesome. I'm gonna go to questions now, but first I'm gonna go ahead and put up a screen here that's got just a few links on it. One is and these links, by the way, will be in the email follow-up that we'll send out probably Monday, with first off the B Player Guide, which is one of our content pieces that Katie was gracious enough to contribute some information to. Second is TrustRadius, which is a fabulous place where Katie works that y'all should know about. And then third is Katie does lead the Austin chapter of Women in Sales Enablement. And that is also, if enablement is on your mind, a fantastic resource to perhaps join and participate in. So going to questions, one of them, and Katie, you had mentioned this when we talked as well, so I'm not surprised to see it come through the question pane. I'm a sales enablement professional. how should everybody in my world is talking about AI, marketing's doing AI, other teams are doing AI. How should I think in enablement about involving AI? Because does it just mean I put everything through Chat GPT, or what do I do?
Yeah, so I think this is a big question in the enablement space right now. Is definitely a topic of our last Global WISE meeting. So I know we'll be diving into it more in the coming year. But how I see it is there are ways to kind of dip your toe into it. Probably every platform that you use today, call intelligence platforms, content management, LMS systems, they all have some sort of AI that they're already using to like auto summarize or to call out the key points that were covered or things like that. So you're probably using AI, even if you don't even realize you're using AI. And if you're worried about it, that's also like a safe place to like dip your toe into it. I think kind of the next emerging space that's going to be really helpful for enablement folks is going to be things like what we're talking about today, using AI to help you to scale practice and to give immediate feedback and to give your reps the reps they deserve to get to a mastery level or at least a solid practitioner level of understanding the themes that are most important to your business. I think there's a lot more as we are diving into this more that will come up. So I'm excited to see what's next. But I think not embracing AI just to embrace AI. I think just like anything else you're considering, thinking about how is it going to help or accelerate your content creation or your delivery process or your reps experience will be key in all of that.
Love it.
One of the angles, we play with this stuff a lot, and so one of the things I'd probably encourage people to think about is Gen 1 of AI was kind of like, oh wow, we can use, check this stuff out, it can create content or a cool picture, and it's like just sort of this novelty. It seems like a lot of what we're seeing out of when it comes to sales enablement right now is the word copilot, right? Like that's kind of everywhere. Every technology platform has released their copilot, which again is great, right? I think it's a new interface. It's more, it just makes it easier to interact with the software. What I'm excited about what's next is we're going to get past the copilots into revolutionary new technologies that are foundationally built on the AI. So it's not how do you use this technology a little bit better with a nicer interface. It's more kind of how can you think about specific problems in sales performance or training or coaching, and what can AI do around those? How can AI make those problems better, simpler, solve them, highlight them? Kind of that's really how I think about it. And I think that's really relevant for sales enablement because right now it's kind of the world of copilots. There's a lot of copilots. And I think we will soon get past the copilots into foundational technologies built natively on the AI systems to help people do their jobs better.
So what I heard, there are more easy buttons. So I'm excited for what's to come.
We want to provide a lot of easy buttons. Another good question here from Janet. I love your guidance. Can you talk about how you might apply these approaches and the use of AI in analyzing and improving performance in human services verticals? For example, for individuals doing community outreach and engagement.
Yes. So dipping into what Noah was saying about having more capabilities of being able to guide someone through like objection handling or connecting to pain or things like that. I could see this being used there, kind of what we have today. And in the future, I think there could be even more capabilities in that realm. So that's my first thought. Noah, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I assume by human services, right, we're talking about, very human interaction models, right? And what I love about that is, there's so much conversation about AI automating everything, right? And so the buyer-seller process is going to be entirely automated and you'll never actually talk to a sales rep. And I think in Janet's question, she's referring to sort of, community outreach and human conversation. And so, one of the things that's really important to us at Quantified is we want to make people better. Like we're not here to replace the reps. We're not here to automate their existence. We want to make the interactions better because, it's an exchange of information or an exchange of something in these fundamental conversations. If we can make those better, make the whole system better. It's more efficient. People get the things that they want. People can share things that people should be aware of in a more efficient way. And we're really focused on using the AI to improve the human as opposed to replace the human. And I think in human services, more than a lot of other verticals, I think we'll see an embrace and adoption of that because of the fundamental nature of that conversation.
One other thing to add to that is I'm reminded of one of the things that my awesome new business director mentioned recently about talking about AI, is that sometimes the beauty of the AI is that it reminds us to be more human, right? It gives us more space to be more creative and to be the best versions of ourselves, especially when you're thinking about outreach or trying to connect with someone in the first place, right? When you're so 2 or 5 or 10 levels down in the day-to-day, sometimes you forget to be human as you'd like to be, and AI in its current form and then where it seems like it's going is going to help us all be even better humans.
I love what you said, Katie, because I think so often we hear companies call us and they say, hey, Noah, we've already optimized reach and frequency. Like that technology we have adopted, and we are doing as much reach and frequency and activity as you can imagine. Can you help us with quality? Because we've never been able to do that before.
Yeah.
And it's that new dimension that if you can unlock for people, it's just remarkable because you've never really had that dial, right? You've never been able to turn that dial up. We've had a lot of technology that helps us turn up reach and frequency. Quality is exciting.
Indeed. One final question, because we're about at time, but this one, somebody asked, hey, you mentioned why is women in sales enablement at the start. What's that? And I happen to be a professional in Austin, enablement professional. How do I get involved?
I would love for you to get involved. So WISE is a global organization with over 30 chapters across the globe. And the one here in Austin, I am the chapter lead. And so we meet once a month to talk about enablement challenges, wins, and just empower the group to help them be their best selves, because we give so much to our teams. We need a little bit of cup filling of our own. So that's what this organization helps us to do. So if you're interested, you have the link on the screen, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn directly. I'll get you added in. And then we also have a global website. So if you aren't in Austin and you're interested, you can still reach out and I'll connect you there, and they will tell you who can help you out with a local chapter so you can do something similar in your own neighborhood.
Outstanding, because the enablers themselves need enabling. We all need our cup filled. So
that's right. That's right.
That's awesome. Well, thank you both for this. This has been a great conversation. I've certainly enjoyed it. I would like to thank people for attending. And at this point, I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, y'all.